Thanks for joining us. What time is it there?
It's 2 hours earlier, so it's 4:09.
Good. I was hoping it wasn't later. Somehow I thought it was going to be later.
That would be terrible.
Get started right away. Welcome everybody. Tuning in with us from abroad is Lanny Henson, who is the director of Class Size Matters. We met back when New York was experiencing its worst overcrowding in decades, in the early 2000s. And she has been a tremendous advocate. I just attributed the governor's decision largely to the pressure that Lanny's been putting on the government over class size. And so without further ado, I wanted to introduce her to all of you and have her talk about the resolution that she's formed so that we can support it. Welcome, Lanny.
Since we have no one on the line, may I request not to show it on the screen because everyone has a handout?
Yeah, that's fine.
Go ahead then.
Should I go ahead?
Please.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint with some data that I'd love to be able to present. So if I can share my screen.
Everybody be able to see? Okay.
Yeah. Where is it now?
Go ahead, I just gave you privileges.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it. As Tricia said, I've been working on this issue for a long time, and I want to see that it actually happens. So I am going around to CECs and community boards and other groups to see if they would pass our resolution urging the city to comply with what is now a state law. So let me just start right off by saying that smaller classes are the top priority for parents in District 2, according to the DOE's own survey last year. Smaller classes was the top choice of parents when given the option of 12 different choices, and it's been the top priority of District 2 parents for at least the last 8 years, except for 1 year during 2021 to 2022, when most classes were smaller as a direct result of the pandemic. So after many years of advocacy and also legal lawsuits by the Campaign for Fiscal Equity and others, a new class size law was passed by the state legislature overwhelmingly in June 2022, signed by the governor law in September 2022, who gave DOE an extra year to comply. So what does the law require? It requires New York City public schools to cap all class sizes to much lower levels to be phased in over 5 years, starting this fall, to no more than 20 kids per class in K through 3, 23 kids per class in 4th through 8th grade, 25 kids per class in high school, which, as I said, are much lower than the UFT contractual limits, which haven't changed in over 50 years. The research is very strong that class size matters in every way that can be measured in terms of student outcomes. And the state's highest court in the CFE case said 20 years ago that New York City kids were actually denied their right to a sound-based education under the state constitution because class sizes were too large. But at that point, class sizes went up and not down. So they passed this law now. All the classes have to be smaller, phased in over 5 years, except for physical education and performing art classes that are supposed to be capped at 40 instead of 50. Each year, starting this fall, 20% of all classes were supposed to be capped at that level, and with an additional 20% every single year from now on until the last year, which is the 2027-2028 school year, when classes are supposed to comply. The city is supposed to prioritize schools with high levels of poverty to reduce class sizes in bursts, which makes a lot of sense. We did make the class size caps this year, but next year looks iffy, and years 3 to 5 look very, very uncertain without real changes in DOE's policies and budgeting, and I'll explain why. So the chancellor did appoint a class size working group last April. I was lucky enough to be appointed as one of the members of this working group. We had more than 45 members, parents, educators, advocates were all sat down and discussed these matters for 6 months. And we had some tough conversations, but we did come out with what I think is a pretty good report in last December, which has some actionable, effective, and some very affordable proposals about how this law could be implemented. I am just going to give you a very short number of our proposals, but there is a link in the PowerPoint, which I'll send you to the entire, which if you have the time, I recommend that you read it because it's got a lot of more detail in there, especially about the capital plan, which is, I was the co-chair of the capital plan subcommittee, and I think the entire school city planning process really needs to be improved in order that we build enough schools along with new development. But in any case, these are a few that of our proposals that I'd like to highlight. Number one, stop co-locating schools and creating new schools without a place to put them in. Every time you co-locate a school, it takes away classroom space by requiring the replication of administrative and cluster or specialty rooms. Adjust enrollment at nearby schools to give all schools the space for smaller classes. Sometimes we have very overcrowded schools sitting very close by very underutilized schools. This was by far the most controversial of our proposals. I'll go into why I think this is so important later. But for one thing, it would save billions of dollars, obviously, in school construction costs and make it much facilitate and expedite the creation of new space for smaller classes. Accelerate, build more schools in overcrowded communities is an absolute must. There are many districts and sub-districts where practically all the schools are overcrowded, and we need to build a lot more schools to provide the space. Strengthen the teacher pipeline. There are many detailed recommendations made from our teacher staffing subcommittee, which I'll refer you to the full report, but it has to do with creating incentives for teachers, both for training and to work, especially in the highest need schools, and also train more of our paras, et cetera, to become certified teachers. And consider adding a separate budget line for class size reduction. Do not require principals to pay for this out of their fair student funding. Why? Two important reasons. Number one, principals are very used to having total flexibility with fair student funding, and they have a lot of other very important staffing needs and programmatic needs that they use that funding line for. And number two, what we've seen is the only way that you can require a school to do anything is to actually provide the funding for it. And we use as a model 3K and pre-K, whose classes are strictly capped by state law at 15 and 18. And DOE has a separate budget line for that to make sure that if the class size goes above that, there's funding for another teacher. And we think that if the city is going to comply with this law, there needs to be separate funding for class size reduction. So what happened for the past 2 years? Class sizes went down significantly during COVID, but in most schools they've gone up for the past 2 years. This slide comes directly out of the DOE's own class size reports. This is their report that they put out in February. And what you can see in terms of citywide averages is that for all grade spans, class sizes went up this year. And for elementary and middle schools, that's the second year in a row of class size increases, which obviously is in the wrong direction. So we also analyzed how many classes complied with the cap. And the good news, as far as I think DOE is concerned, is that 2 years ago, we already had over 40% of classes making the cap, 42.4%. So they were sort of given a head start, but now we're down to under 40%. These are academic classes because we don't have all the classes reported on over the last 2 years. So if you have all the classes reported on, it's more like 40%, but still it's moving in the wrong direction. And we strongly believe that there's a good chance that we will not make the 40% next year, again, without real changes in DOE policies. So let's go to the next slide. DOE has given a couple of arguments for why they don't want to comply with the law. One of the ones that they've made repeatedly is that the highest need schools already have smaller classes, and therefore we don't want to make this citywide because we'd be taking money away from those high need schools. Now, of course, that wouldn't necessarily be true if you just added more money to the budget. But even then, we looked at the class sizes of schools according to a weighted need formula that was devised by the state education department that looked at both the number of high need students and the percentage of high need students. And we found that the higher than the weighted need of a school, the less likely it is to have smaller classes. The formula that DOE uses that only looks at the number of high need students is biased because many of those schools have very, very small populations overall and very few students. So this is what we found when we did the analysis. So the highest weighted need is over to the quartile 1. Only 27.3% of their classes made the caps. Whereas the lowest weighted need is over to the right and is 58%. So you can see the trend line is the opposite of what DOE claims using their formula. And then we looked at how many schools in each quartile made all the caps. So only 46% of 46 schools overall out of more than 1,500 this fall made all the caps. Not a single one in the highest need, which is highest weighted need, which is quartile 1. And let me move this so I can see it, 36 in the lowest weighted need. There were 3 schools that we couldn't calculate the weighted need because they were new schools without any data in the demographic snapshot. So this is the data for District 2, as well as all the other districts, but District 2 is highlighted in darker colors, and you can see that this year, 23.3% of your K-3 classes made the caps, but that's an increase over last year, 22.7. No, this is, sorry, let's start from scratch. This is the actual average class size, okay? So let's take not percentages, but your average class sizes this fall were 23.3 in grades K through 3 compared to 22.7 last year. And you can see you're over to the right, which means you tend to have among the highest class sizes of any district in the state in those grade levels. Not the highest, but more than average. This is the percentage classes that made the cap in K through 3. The percentage is down to 21.9% compared to over 27% last year of classes in K through 3 made the caps of 20 or less. This is your 4 through 8. Similar pattern in that the class sizes went up a tiny bit. Average class sizes to 26.6, which is way over the cap. You can see that red line, which represents the cap at 23. Again, it's even further over to the right, which means it's a little bit more on the higher side compared to other school districts. And this is the percentage of classes that made the cap, 21%, which is actually a little bit more than last year, but it's still very low. And then these are high school class sizes, which went up significantly from 23.5 on average to 25.5% on average over the cap this year, in 1 year. And the percentage of classes in the high school that made the cap went down from over 50% to 43.5% in District 2. So we also looked at overcrowding in the district and citywide, which of course is going to be a factor in how many schools will be able to lower class size. And we're using the data out of the latest Blue Book, which reflects the data as of last year, not this year, but it's the latest data we have. Another, cautionary note is that a lot of people think that the Blue Book data isn't altogether accurate for their schools. There's a lot of problems with the way that they measure overcrowding, and to some extent they underestimate the actual overcrowding that many schools do experience. However, again, it's the best data that we have. So about over 1/4 of all schools in New York City were overutilized last year. That's 405. And in District 2, it's 27% of schools. So it's a little even higher than what the citywide average. And in District 2, that includes almost half of all elementary schools at 48.6%, 27% of middle schools, and about 16% of high schools. The averages are a little bit higher for high schools citywide. 39% of students citywide were enrolled in overcrowded schools, and 35% of students in District 2. And this analysis that we get from the Blue Book roughly aligns with the DOE statement that approximately 500 schools currently do not have the space to lower class size to mandated levels with their current enrollment. In his testimony to the legislature a couple weeks ago, Chancellor Banks did say, while some schools have the space, some schools just need a few classrooms, some need many classrooms, and building new space will take years to complete and billions of dollars in new capital. So despite the statement, despite the existing overcrowding, despite the new class size law, the new 5-year capital plan radically cuts the number of new seats rather than expanding and accelerating new school construction. They've cut the new seats by over $2 billion in the new proposed plan compared to the current plan, and the number of new seats cut in half. All identified projects are carried over from the current 5-year plan, non-completed schools, with an undisclosed number of previously funded seats cut, which they will not tell us. They will not even tell the PEP how many previously funded seats are cut, which you would think would be easy to figure out, but we've worked hard and we can't figure it out. And one of the reasons we can't figure out is more than 70% of the seats in the new 5-year plan are completely unidentified as to borough, district, sub, or grade level, which we believe is actually illegal. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. So this is a chart that shows how much new capacity was funded in the various iterations of the current 5-year plan. So the first 5 bars show you how they've been cutting new capacity consistently from the very first time that plan was proposed. And then the bar over to the right is how much new capacity is being funded in the new 5-year plan. And you can see that it's cut by $2 billion compared to the current plan. But if you compare it to the original current plan, it's about $4 billion. This is the number of seats in each iteration of the current plan, of how they've been cutting new seats. The blue lines are the seats planned, the green lines are seats actually funded. And then you can see how, again, they cut it even more radically in the proposed 5-year plan, which hasn't yet been adopted, but is up for adoption at the end of June. And this is a timeline. This shows you all the information that we could glean in a very complicated manner from the current capital plan and the new 5-year plan. And what's really distressing is you can see that 2027, that's the fall of 2027 each year. That year, by the end of that year is when the class size caps are supposed to be achieved in all schools. And you can see a radically declining number of seats to be completed over each year until 2027, and then again, not many seats in the next 5 years. And then this is a detailed chart which you can look at your leisure, but this is by school district, how many seats are planned by which year. And here's District 2. You can see by 2025, it says 275 seats, and then I think total is 445 by 2026. And then this is another timeline, but the main point of this one is, well, you are getting supposedly 1,500 seats at some time during the next 5-year capital plan, which could be as late as 2009. But the main point of this is to show you the bar over to the right, which is all the seats that haven't been determined as to where they are supposed to be by district, sub-district, or grade level. These are complete indeterminate seats. And then this is a chart that I thought was interesting. John Liu grilled the mayor because the mayor asked for more funding to be able to borrow money to finance bonds for the city's capital needs. Because apparently they've reached some sort of limit. And John Liu, who was the prime sponsor of the class size bill, said, "Is that for schools or prisons?" And the mayor would not say. And so what it shows is overall, as a percentage of our capital strategy as a city, we are spending less and less money on schools. So as I said, the lack of transparency in the capital plan is very troubling. It's as troubling in my eyes as the radical cut in the amount spent on new seats. In the capital plan, it says from now on, projects will be officially listed in the plan following the identification of a suitable site and the start of the design process, which basically completely takes it out of the hands of the school communities, parents, teachers, advocates, local elected officials, who are often the main ones who go out and fight for schools and find the sites, et cetera. Basically, the SEA is thumbing its nose at you guys, at everybody, and saying, we're not even going to tell you where we're funding new schools from now on until we've already bought the site and the process of design is begun. As I said, I think this violates 2 laws. One of them is 2590O, which requires the chancellor to annually prepare an educational facilities master plan, including a list of prioritized projects to the extent ascertainable, to list each new facility and set forth a justification, including demographic data documenting the long-term need thereof, which, by the way, the SEA has never done very well, but at least they've said where they intend to build schools. It also more specifically violates the class size law, which says that the DOE must submit an annual capital plan for school construction and leasing to show how many classrooms will be added in each year and in which schools and districts to achieve the class size targets. And then we also found a memorandum of understanding that was signed and is signed again by the city council with the mayor every year, which basically says that you have to include the location of each project by building or school district, etc. So there's 2 other laws that we pushed very hard that were passed in 2018. Neither have been complied with by the SCA. We believe in it fully complied with. One was explaining their seats needs estimates, which we could never replicate. Instead, they took out the column in the capital plan, which has their separate seats needs estimate. This is another law which created a task force to come up with school sites more rapidly by analyzing all city-owned and privately owned empty lots to see if they might be suitable to site schools. They excluded any input from the city council and parent members, which included, by the way, Shino Tanakawa. Through FOIL, we received a spreadsheet that ruled out lots of city-owned sites for reasons that we could not understand and never reported on the suitability of 22,000 privately owned sites. But in the resolution that I drafted, I think it mentions the importance of reconvening that task force with a lot more public input in order to find sites that will be necessary to comply with the law. Okay, and this deals with the enrollment issue, which I know you probably have heard is probably the most controversial thing about our report and our proposals. We believe that the fact that there are many underutilized schools at the same grade levels sitting right close by overcrowded schools is highly dysfunctional and damaging to both sets of schools. And by allowing enrollment to be more equalized across schools, we would also save a lot of money and a lot of time in terms of school construction and make it more likely that all students would be able to be provided with smaller classes and in the overcrowded schools, be able to have lunch at a reasonable time. Often overutilized schools, kids have to have lunch at like 10:30 or 11 a.m. or as late as 2:30 in the afternoon, and also are shut out of a lot of activities. And I've even heard of elementary schools where the kindergarten kids don't even get time to the playground because the school is so overcrowded. And then for underutilized schools, they also suffer because their budget is so closely tied to their enrollment. Often they cannot provide full programs and services to their kids. They can't provide art or music. Sometimes they don't have enough intervention services. And in fact, Deputy Chancellor Weisberg admitted this at a recent town hall meeting in Brooklyn, where a kid who was applying to middle school, I guess, had been made aware of the disproportion among many schools in her district, in District 15, in terms of enrollment, and said that isn't it unfair that some schools have so many more kids and they're able to keep their teachers or hire more teachers, whereas there are other schools that don't have enough kids and they have to lay off teachers. And the Deputy Chancellor Weisberg at that meeting said, that's true. Students equal dollars. If the school gets too small, you can't afford programs like PSAL, enrichment, debate clubs, etc. We've got too many schools that have gotten below critical mass. And yet recently at another town hall meeting, Weisberg said that capping enrollment at lower levels in any overcrowded school would be anti-parent and anti-family. So that's the mentality of some of them at the DOE, and honestly, among some parents as well. So one of the problems that we face, the DOE faces, and our schools face, class size reduction or not, is that DOE plans ongoing cuts, massive cuts to the DOE budget over the next 4 years. We've already seen cuts to school budgets the last 2 years, which is why in most schools class sizes went up. About 600 schools faced mid-year adjustment cuts this current school year, and the mayor cut over $500 million in this school year, which I don't know how much schools suffered, but I think that was part of the mid-year adjustments as well. And he plans cuts of more than $500 million in each of the next 4 years. With cuts this large, there's no way that schools aren't going to have their budgets and their staffing cut. There's no way that class sizes wouldn't go up further. We looked at the school allocation memos, which are called the SAMs. Only one category of schools got any specific money this year to lower class size, and that was schools that had gifted classes whose class sizes were smaller than 18 kids per class. So those schools got extra funding to subsidize very, very small gifted classes, which probably are the kids who need smaller classes the least. So how many teachers will we need? The estimates vary hugely for reasons that I do not understand. The IBO estimated 17,000 teachers, the DOE 10 to 12,000. I asked the IBO why their estimates differed so much from DOE. Usually the DOE overestimates these things that they don't want to do. The IBO said they reached out to DOE and got no answer, but it's a large number no matter what. We know that for sure. And one of the real problems with ramping up is that the DOE has already cut the full-time K-12 teaching force by over 4,000 teachers since fiscal year 2019, which of course is going to make it more challenging to ramp up with all the new teachers that we need, starting, I believe, next year and beyond. Moreover, the financial plan that OMB put out just a few weeks ago projects another loss of nearly 3,000 full-time teachers over the next 2 years. And again, it's going to be impossible to lower class up with these loss of teachers. So this just shows you what happened since 2019 in terms of the loss of full-time K-12 teachers, which we disaggregated from DOE data. And this is what they project over the next 2 years in order to save money. They're going to continue to contract the teaching force for the next 2 years, which again, I don't see, that that in and of itself means class sizes they intend to go up, not down. And so what about the money? So there's a lot of discussion about where's the money going to come from, because honestly, it's going to be expensive. Now, Senator Lieu and many others, including our organization, HU and others, point out that it's only right that they should be required to lower class size now, because class size was the central issue in the CFE lawsuit, as I mentioned earlier. And we are finally getting our full amount of foundation funding promised after many, many years from the state as a result of the CFE settlement. And it's $1.3 billion in additional foundation aid going to our schools that is supposed to be used to lower class size and provide a sound basic education. And instead, the DOE has not used it for that purpose. Instead, DOE has cut back on its own funding to schools at the same time, which the UFT has a lawsuit about, saying that it's true that there's been no maintenance of effort. Whether they'll win that lawsuit or not is another question, but the contracts for excellence and the CFE money was supposed to require maintenance of effort and no supplanting by DOE, and they have definitely supplanted and cut back on their own schools at the same time as we've gotten this more money. And there are additional sources of money that we have available. Now, how much will it cost for staffing alone? IBO estimates this amount of money, 2014, starting in fiscal year 2026, which is not next year, but the year after. For some reason, they think that there's enough money now so that we'll make the caps of 40% next year without any more money. I happen not to believe that, but in any case, let's assume that's true. 427 million. I suppose if they adjusted enrollment alone, they wouldn't cost them a dime. Actually, it would save money, but they're not prepared to do that. 2014, 214 million in 2026 fiscal year, and then another 427 million for the 2 years thereafter. Now, IBO also said that they expect the next year's budget to have a $3.3 billion surplus. The city does have a rainy day fund of $2 billion. And there are other revenue and savings options. I'm just going to talk about one source of funding, which I feel very passionately about, which is charter schools. DOE's charter schools cost continue to increase sharply. We already pay out nearly $3 billion a year directly to charter schools from the DOE budget, and the mayor has projected that that will increase by by more than $700 million by fiscal year 28. We could get transition aid from the state. However, we're the only district in the entire state that is excluded from getting any charter transition aid, which is supposed to make up for some of the loss of public school funding when charter school funding expands. So we've lost out on $2.6 billion of charter transition aid between 2011 and 2022, according to a report put out by the Education Law Center. And we are losing out on nearly $100 million or $93 million this year in charter transition aid. We are also the only district in the entire state and the country that has to pay for charter school rent. And we are paying about $100 million a year now, this year, on charter school rent. That amount continues to go up fast as well as the number of charter school students and then expands. And the charter schools honestly rook us out of more and more money. We did 2 reports on this. Charter management organizations often sublease or buy their own space and then raise the rent on their charter schools in order to get more money out of DOE. There was an article in Chalkbeat this week. I don't know whether you read it. I was quoted in it because of the reports that we've done that showed that there is a charter school in Staten Island, which the DOE has been reimbursing, and then an affiliated nonprofit called Friends of the Charter School took over the lease and tripled the lease in 1 year, because as they admitted, they wanted to to acquire an empty lot next to the school to build a whole new school building to expand their enrollment, including grade levels that they have not even yet been authorized to serve. And DOE said, you can't do this legally. And in a very weird turn of events, the charter school appealed to the state education department, and the state education department said, yes, you have to give them this money, in a decision which honestly I don't understand. But when I talked to the state education department about it, it said they wanted to stress how irrational the law is and how there is no oversight over these expenses. And they want the legislature to change the law, but I still don't understand the decision. But in any case, it's an example of how more and more money is getting squeezed out of DOE by this really terrible, unprecedented law. And then there's something else which I discovered as being a member of the class size working group, which I had not known. The IBO had not known it. The Citizens Budget Commission had not known it, and members of the state legislature had known it. And I'm still trying to find out more about it. But we had all thought that we got 50% reimbursement from the state for new school construction. And it turns out that it's only about 25% because the city has reached some sort of cost cap with school construction. And we're trying to find out if that cost cap can be changed or what can be done about it. But it's very concerning as well. This is just a slide that goes into some other revenue proposals, which most of them the IBO has gone into. Doesn't look like it's going to happen this year anyway, but you can look at it later if you're interested. So how can you guys help us? Well, we are going to quite a few CECs and community boards, asking them if they would pass a resolution urging the DOE to actually comply with the law, to put together a real plan to lower class size and to adopt some of the proposals of the class size working group. I spoke to CB2 last night, Education Committee. They voted unanimously to adopt our resolution. And I think it puts additional pressure on DOE, hopefully, to do the right thing, and also is a way to reach out to our elected officials with the problems in the fundamental problems in the lack of planning by DOE and the incredible absurdity of this capital plan. There are going to be budget hearings, education budget hearings on the 18th of March. If you could have time, you can testify in person or remotely, or just submit your testimony online, written testimony, which would be great. To stay up on this issue, if you aren't already subscribed to our newsletter, there's a link there where you can subscribe to it. You can always email me questions or ask me questions now. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lainey. That was an incredible amount of information. I'm always amazed at your ability to stick with this and dig deep into the data. I too am surprised and disappointed that, this is a state law that was passed. And yet I don't see the state taking an active role in the implementation. They, much like the charter school situation, they've offloaded all of the financial responsibility onto the city, which for me is mystifying. So that was one of my questions for you, having only glanced at this. Do you talk, you did have that time with the state education department. Did this come up? And did you get any reason why they don't feel obligated to be a financial partner in the implementation of this law?
The state education department. Is that who you're asking?
They're looking to the city to manage the financial aspects of, from what I'm understanding, of reducing class size when it's a state law that was passed.
So, the state education department has a central role in enforcing this law. And we, along with AQE, wrote a letter asking for an immediate corrective action plan as soon as the DOE submitted their plan in November. So every year, the DOE is Now, actually, take it back. This DOE is supposed to submit their actual plan depending on when the state budget is due. There's a specific timeline in the law, and I think it's actually sometime in July. And there's a timeline that we actually wrote, because what had been happening in past years with the contracts for excellence is they'd been holding the hearings so late in the year that none of the public input had any input, real meaning, because the money had already been spent. But all the public hearings on the plan, more transparency, it's all supposed to happen starting a month after the state budget is finalized. And we're hoping, in most years, it's supposed to be finalized by March 30th, and then it starts, the timetable starts on April 30th. There's supposed to be hearings. The DOE is supposed to present a plan. There's supposed to be feedback on the plan, and then the state is supposed to either accept or reject the plan. AQE and Class Size Matters wrote a letter to the state urging them to reject the city's plan because it was, I thought, laughable. It had no details in it. One of the things that in the law, it says it's supposed to project what class sizes are going to be for the following year. And DOE admitted that they can't do that, probably because they have no plan to do it. But we're hoping that they will pick up the slack this year. And if the city does not put together a real class size plan, then they will order a corrective action plan. We're hoping that the UFT will join us in this time, urging them to do so if they don't have a real plan by then. And if there is a corrective action plan, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. And they have to put forward a real plan, and it has to be certified by the controller's office that there is enough money in terms of school budgeting and the capital plan for space and staffing to comply with the law.
Well, this is my
And
question.
if they do not comply, if the corrective action plan is not compliant, or they do not comply with the corrective action plan, the state can hold back funding, which is, of course, something that we don't want to see happen. But it's really the only leverage the state has over the city. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. This mayor seems intent on messing his own future up in as many ways as he can. I can tell you that when he testified before the state legislature, several different legislators brought up repeatedly the issue of mayoral control and said, look, you're not reducing class size. Why should we extend mayoral control? Now, personally, I don't think the two should be that closely linked, because I don't think we should be extending mayoral control anyway for a lot of other reasons. But he knows that he's very sensitive on this issue of mayoral control. He knows that John Liu, who's the prime sponsor of the class size law, is also the chair of the Senate New York City Education Committee, and is going to have a huge amount of input over whether mayoral control is extended, amended, or lapses. I don't think there's any chance it's going to lapse completely. Any chance we'll go back to the old days, but maybe there'll be imbalances. In any case, I can't predict the future. And even if I had a real gut feeling about what was going to happen, I wouldn't, because I'm superstitious about these things. But I honestly have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, Kelly McGuire was in here not too long ago, and he said that they might have trouble meeting it financially, and they also don't have the space. You know, if they take schools like Millennium, for instance, you know, my daughter walked into a class of 37 her freshman year. If you take a school like that in an office building and you try to be compliant, they don't have the physical space in that building to be compliant, let alone the money. They don't have the physical space. And that was one of the things Kelly was talking about. That's a specific challenge to District 2, because, you know, our schools have traditionally been quite full and in high demand. People want to get into them to the point where if they're in a class of 34, if they get into the school, they're happier than being assigned somewhere they don't want to go. So like the whole goal of class size can sometimes be at odds. I mean, you pointed out a small way that it was at odds with parents' wishes. So, you know, we really do have our work cut out for us, I think.
Well, if I were running the DOE, I would have started whenever the class size law was passed in June 2022 and radically expanded the capital plan and started putting together a real plan. And some schools might have to cap their enrollment. Other schools, another one of our recommendations is that schools can go on, high schools especially, could go on overlapping shifts if they don't have the space. So some of them could start earlier in the morning and later in the evening. And there was a debate over whether that was a good idea for middle schools or not. And I don't know where we ended up, but that all these things should be done with the consultation of the school community and the SLT.
Right.
But it still seems to me that that we should be advocating for a system where all schools are good schools. And that's the way it is in the suburbs. No one fights and scratches for a good school. That's what a good school system looks like. And one of the ways you can make all schools better schools is by lowering class size. And it shouldn't be a Darwinian universe or, where everybody has to fight over scraps. And even the quote unquote best schools are not as good as they would be with large class sizes. Many kids, even relatively high achieving kids, suffer from the lack of attention that they get in classes of 30, 34, or even more. So it's my job to advocate for all the kids in the city and all the schools in the city. And I think this is something that has to get done. And if the DOE doesn't want to, doesn't somehow want to cap enrollment at Millennium, then create a lot of satellite Millenniums. They've already created one in Brooklyn, I know, and create more. But I can tell you some of the best schools like Bard cap all class sizes at 20. It's one of the few high schools that already complies with the law. And we have a new Bard that's opening up in the Bronx that has capped class sizes at 20. The music school, the special music school, which gets, I think, the highest test scores in the city, caps class sizes at 18. What?
That principal did not have the ability to cap the class. I'm curious about Bard because Millennium certainly did not. He was ordered to take the 37 kids. So, not all principal, there are so many little components of this that have to walk hand in hand for it to be successful. It's daunting. Let me take a question from the room. Corey?
I just had a question about terms that I didn't understand. What is co-locating? And also, there was something on one of the slides about not creating new schools, and I wasn't.
Right. So what
understand.
happens often, and if you've been a parent for a while, especially during the Bloomberg administration, but it continues to this day, they continue to create new small schools and or take charter schools and put them in existing school buildings with other schools. And I think, as many as a half of all schools or more are co-located with other schools in the same building. And what that does is it eats up classroom space, because every new school in an existing building needs its own principal's office. It needs its own, sometimes assistant principal's office. It needs its own art room. If it offers art, it needs its, sometimes they share libraries, sometimes they don't. But in any case, it's a very wasteful use of space in many schools, which makes reducing class size much more difficult. And yet the administration continues to co-locate charter schools and create new small schools and put them in existing school buildings where they squeeze the existing schools of the space they need to lower class size. So there was actually a lawsuit about this last year where the UFT and some parents and educators sued for because Success Academy was supposed to be co-located in a campus in Sheepshead Bay, a high school campus, where many of the high schools in that building were way over the class size cap. And if you put the charter school in the building, that would basically eliminate the space they needed to lower class size. And they lost the lawsuit, but they're appealing it now to the higher courts.
Sarah, online? Sarah E.
Hi. Just a couple of questions and comments. You mentioned that the gifted and talented, they were allocated budgets for smaller classroom size, correct?
If they had classes that were lower than 18 and therefore could not be funded out of fair student funding, they were given extra money to make sure that they could keep that teacher for that very small class.
Because my son goes to Nest and the average classroom size is 30. And
Well, it's not
it's
true
not
in
up
all
to the
schools.
principal, it's not up to anyone.
It's not all schools have very small gifted classes, but some schools do. And I can show you the spreadsheet where it lists the schools that got this money this year.
Great.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
And then the other question
Sorry, Sarah,
regarding
go on.
a lot of the school, the co-location, a lot of it was District 75. Those were the schools that there was a lot of co-location, like for example, Spruce Street downtown, they're co-located with a District 7 school. It's also been said is to go after, like, not to have, or is it just the charter schools?
So in our report, we specifically exempted the District 75 schools from our recommendations that they should not be co-located because there is such a need for those students to have schools nearby their homes in many cases.
Desi?
Well, first, yes, Cody, like Julia Richmond Education Complexes, that actually happened
Urban
to
Academy is-
my high school, my
Really?
alma mater, yes.
My friend taught at Urban Academy.
Ah,
So,
Which is interesting. I went to Julia Richmond High School and I was in the Talent Unlimited program, and now that is its own high school. So it's the Talent Unlimited High School within the Julia Richmond Education Complex. It's a thing, right? And so I think, one of the other issues with the co-locating is that you can see in some instances that there's a stark contrast of inequity there. Because when you have some of the schools that are coming in, they're getting like Fresh Direct for lunches, and, you can see that some of the schools maybe have more art supplies and more resources, and they're existing within schools that were already there that are not getting those same resources. So not only are you having this squeeze and this issue around sizes, you're also seeing a lot of inequity within those spaces.
yeah, good point.
And sometimes it's most stark with the charter schools. So a lot of the charter schools, especially like Success Academy, has a lot of money. And they repaint their walls and they have new rugs every single year, and they have the new computers and new air conditioners. And the state legislature passed a law a few years back, I think in 2014, saying that DOE had to provide matching funds for facility enhancements for every public school that was co-located with a charter school to make sure that, to minimize those disparities that so many people had noted. And yet we did, in one of our reports, we actually looked at the fact, we foiled for the data on how much the public school was getting compared to the charter school. And we found that the public school was cheated by hundreds of millions of dollars in facility upgrades by DOE.
Yeah, totally. 2 classes of service. And,
Literally and figuratively.
yes, it really is. Anybody else have any questions? Lenny? Cody, did I cut you off? Did you want more? Do you have another
No,
question?
no, I was really, everything got explained.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very complicated, there's a lot of issues that I was really, and you did explain it, that the state has made their contribution and they're playing sort of chicken and egg with the city in terms of the funding, it sounds like. But, it is their initiative. I'd like to see them be more of an active partner, and I'd like to see them step forward with charter schools and figure out a way for them to get their own, space. They take private dollars. And, they have a board of directors. I don't know why we continue to fund them with taxpayer dollars. They should be nonprofits. You know what I mean?
Right. It's an unusual situation, the charter schools in New York City, because there's a very strong charter lobby made up of mostly Wall Street billionaires who want to expand charter schools as fast as possible in New York City and don't really care what happens in the rest of the state, where the public schools are, in many respects, in some of the other cities, even lower performing. And Michael Bloomberg is one of them, and he has put $100 million into expanding charter schools. And he sees this class size law as a grave threat to his ability to continue to expand charter schools. And
Right.
so do a lot of his allies at the New York Post and elsewhere. And so there is a shortage of space. And the question is, as a city, should we prioritize charter schools over the needs of public school students? And I say no. But unfortunately, there are a lot of powerful people who say yes.
I still don't get it. I mean, it's privately funded. I don't know why they want taxpayer dollars or feel as though they deserve them. I'm not against charter schools. Actually, if someone, you know, if the school nearby isn't working for them and they want to go to basically a private school, I think it's fine. It's just, to me, why are taxpayers paying for that? And because they have a different criteria. I don't know if you guys know this, but at the end of October, they can take any troublemakers, any kids they don't think are going to be performing, paying attention, whatever, and they can throw them out. Like literally send them back to the neighborhood zoned school in elementary school. No other school can do that. It's one of the reasons, I think, for their success rate is that they cherry pick their students on top of it.
Absolutely.
So it really resembles more of a private school setup, and that's why my feeling is, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Set yourself up as a nonprofit. If you want to have billionaire board of directors, go for it, but I don't really want to pay for that. You know, I don't think it's right that we're fighting over seats from them, we're fighting for space from them, and they're not a full public school, as we know them. They don't like the union. They can sidestep the union in opening a charter school. And why are we letting this happen? So, I mean, I think we should be fighting that fight along with the class size fight, because they really do walk hand in hand
And who are
in a
they
lot of ways.
governed by, charter schools?
It's a state.
So,
Charter schools are state schools. And they are, they do not have union teachers. They have a board of directors, and they can hire whoever they want and pay them however much they
Right.
want. I mean, even Moskowitz makes what, $500,000?
No, she
Right.
makes more than $1 million a year now.
Does she?
Yeah.
So when you look at that, that's a school principal, and
Mhm.
our most seasoned principals in New York City make, I would say, 200 max. And so when you think about that, we have public school teachers that have been working 25 years, 30 years, and they're capped at that salary, and yet you've got charter school salaries where they are. So again, it's like apples and oranges, so we should really separate the baskets.
Okay,
We're all
Well, there are bills that have been, that I can send you the information. There's bills that have been introduced in the state legislature on exempting New York City from having to pay charter rent, which is causing a huge amount of problems. And
Yeah.
also there's a bill that was recently introduced in the Senate anyway, and we're hoping in the Assembly on charter transition aid. And both of those bills would help a lot, because the chancellor says every time he wants to co-locate a school, a charter school, in a public school building, he says, well, if I don't co-locate it, I have to help pay for their rent, and I don't want to do that. So those two bills are going to be pushing hard.
okay, but Trish, okay, I'm gonna put on another hat here. When our kids were growing up and we were able to put them in a school like Millennium and like go from Spruce to Millennium, we did not go through the hell what the parents are going through today. If I am now having kids in elementary school and I'm going through the process, honestly, I would, and you know that I was one of the people with you fighting charter schools to be located in District 2. We got all of the petition and we did not get them in. However, today, that would be one of my only choices. It would be either Catholic school or charter school, because the DOE's process has been hideous for parents. So we need to take that in consideration for what parents are going through now to get their kids, whether in middle school or high school. So
You know, I agree with you. I don't think they should be I don't think they should be supported by taxpayers, Sarah. What I was saying is, you know, there are billionaires that finance. They have an open book in terms of the way that they can fund their schools, right? We can't take a donation at Millennium from Bill Gates for $500,000. Like, we can't take that from him. It's against the law. Whereas a charter school can. So my feeling is, I think it's great if a charter school is an option. I think it's wonderful if people want to send their kids there. I just don't think it's right that it is a private model that we should be supporting the rent and supporting them with taxpayer dollars if they have this funding stream that's extraordinary. They don't need the money. And that's what's so shocking to me is that, you know, I heard one of the directors laughing and how great it was that they actually got city money on top of the billions the school had already gotten in funding. And, you know, because I think it's hysterical that is still the case. So that's my only point, Sarah. I agree with you 100%. Everybody I know that's applying to high school, middle school and high school has charter schools in their portfolio of choices. I really just don't want it to affect this state law because they can reduce their class sizes without anybody's permission, whereas our public school, New York City public school teachers cannot. And I just think we need to have some equality across the two different education models, that's all. But I like that they're there, honestly. They help a lot of people where the zone school isn't as strong as well. I know lots of people who live in neighborhoods where schools are still developing. They don't even have a zone school. And they do have a charter school. So I'm sorry that I came across that way because I'm all about it. I don't like fighting them for dollars.
I get that.
Where do you even really begin? I mean, I'm going to share my age.
Just out of elementary school?
I will be 52 on my next birthday.
Wow, you sort of look at.
You're supposed to say, what? There you go. Absolutely. And I say this because I was born and raised in New York City public schools, and I've always had an issue with overcrowding.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a problem that is decades long. And I don't even know if they have it anymore. I was in IGC, which is the intellectually gifted children. And all of those classes were overcrowded. I remember getting a roster. It would have 25 numbers on it printed. And then it would have an additional 6 or 7 numbers added. I was always in classes with 30 to 33 students.
Yeah.
Always. And so I don't know what changes if this is still the issue.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I read an article in the New York Times from the 1920s that said our overcrowded schools and class sizes are the chief problem of our public schools. And I believe that to this day, that is the chief problem of our public schools, and that it should no longer be the chief problem of our public schools, because students are not given the real chance they need to succeed, especially high need students, and teachers are not given a real chance to succeed when classes are as large as they are in many public schools. So either you believe in small classes or you don't think it's that important, and you don't. I mean, but it's clearly been a problem for at least 100 years and probably long. But the disproportion in class size in New York City compared to other schools and other districts statewide is relatively new. It's probably a post-war problem.
And I never had teachers' aides either.
Yeah, they don't do that here. I've never seen, like, it's really controversial hiring a teacher aide in New York City Public School. I remember 234 didn't do it. And
Yeah, a lot of the schools, I'm familiar with the elementary schools, the parents, the PTAs raise money to hire the teachers' aides. And
Yeah.
it basically favors the well-to-do schools.
That's true.
And some schools raise as much as like $500,000 or more and use the money to hire teachers aid
Yeah,
or assistant teachers aid.
that's the other thing, right? Is that thing you brought up, Laney, about kids at the overcrowded school not wanting to go to the under enrolled school right next door, is that unfortunately, the way these schools are funded, the parents tend to be the ones responsible for rich curriculum, you know, with the money they give to their PTAs. And as a result, they get to have, well, maker spaces, they get to have, you know, really beautiful science labs and two different kinds of art teachers and, you know, and Alvin Ailey, coming to the school to do, you know, dance presentations. So I think, you know, that's another problem is that until we get this funding, you know, across the board enough to create rich curriculum at every school, it's gonna be really hard to talk parents and our kids into thinking more broadly about where to go. And because today they believe that rich curriculum makes a great school. Whether that's true or not, right now, their parents are buying it at a lot of these schools because there isn't enough money to have what should be basic, you know, rich parts of any school's curriculum. And, you know, we've been fighting that for years. We tried to share PTA dollars across our district to, you know, share those things with schools that didn't have the money. And that's actually against the chancellor's regs. You can't do it. You can't give another school some of your PTA money.
Wouldn't the PTA fundraising go down though? That were unfortunately,
I don't
Like,
know,
is that
there
true?
was a lot of support at 234. You know, we raised a lot of money at that school. And it was discussed at our meetings, I know, and a lot of the board members were in favor of it. And we actually took it to the chancellor and they pointed out that it was against regulation. So
I think conceptually it sounds great, but in practice, this is the reason why schools, like when you get into high school, they can't raise as much money because they don't think the kids are going to use it as much. So I think he's right. It would, you know, it's conceptually it sounds amazing, but you know, ultimately a lot of schools, no, you know, they won't do it.
yeah. So I don't know, but you know, let's come back to this resolution. Has everybody had a chance to read it?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Lenny on the points in the resolution? I think it's incredibly well written.
Yeah, I didn't object to anything. in
I
it.
didn't either.
Everything is great. How can you object to it?
I don't know exactly. All right, well then, you want to call the question and just take a vote? While we have Lenny with us to witness?
No question.
Everybody in favor of passing the resolution? And it passes unanimously, Lenny. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, Tricia. I just remember the old days in Shelley Silver's office where we, you know, he fought so hard for more schools for downtown. And then with Kathy Black, remember when she made that faux pas? Remember that?
Yes, sadly, I remember that. I've almost forgotten.
All right. Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. When you get a final copy, please, on letterhead, please remember to send it to me. And thanks again.
Thank you for this work.
Can you also send the office presentation?
I'll send you the presentation. Yes, will do.
Thanks a million.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
calling in while you're away. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, she has been at this a really long time. So it was a good victory and now we just have to see how we can get it to implement. So this is like the beginning, not nearly the end on this one. Anyway, does anybody have any other comments, ideas? Since it's just us.
It's funny because like at BMCC at CUNY in general, PSC CUNY or union, I'm not faculty, but I am in the union. So, we're hearing more and more about the raising class sizes because people are getting laid off. Well, not laid off, they're just not rehiring a lot of adjunct professors. So this is a discussion that continues on,
I know.
with budgeting and whatnot, at City University of New York, and
And it's did you know, so as an adjunct, that more than 75% of higher education is taught by adjunct
Yes.
faculty?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like people don't realize that.
Just gonna adjourn the meeting so we can have this conversation off YouTube.
Who's the second?
Yeah, but
Second.
Oh, yeah.
You, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, YouTube.
Thank you.